Hi, my name's Stephanie Crouch, and today I'm going to be reading Chapter 3 of Stowaway by John David Anderson. Chapter 3, The Worst Pirate in the Universe. Leo's world had always been a little alien. He was only 2 when the Ikari made first contact. He had no memory of being huddled around the television watching their arrival like his brother did. He had no recollection of a world without spaceships and jump drives and translator ships. He had no idea what coal was used for or how paper was made, but by age 8 he knew how an artificial gravity generator worked, sort of, and could list the steps required to terraform a hostile planet. He couldn't imagine a world without aliens because his world had always been filled with them. He could remember his father reading his favorite picture book, Hello, Humans, over and over, though. A pop-up book that told about the day the Ikari first came to Earth. The cardboard pictures of New York and Beijing high-rises snapping to life tickled Leo almost as much as pulling the tab and watching the glittering Ikari cruiser whip around across the page like a silver bullet. The comical-looking alien at the end, spindly arms extended for a welcoming embrace, was a little startling, but the smile on its face suggested everything would be just fine. Of course, the real Ikari didn't smile. Their mouths didn't work that way. They were tiny circles that opened and closed like irises, letting out words the way our eyes let in more light. The only way to know if an Ikari was pleased was if its diamond-shaped eyes turned blue. If they turned orange, well, that was a different story. In the year 2044, the book began, someone came knocking on Earth's door. It was one of 3 years every school-age kid had memorized, counting their birthday. Everything before that was BC, before contact. Before Earth's polluted sky filled with ships of radiant silver. There had been hints of their arrival, Leo would learn in galactic history class. SETI had been issuing reports of increased feedback, potential messages they didn't have the technology to translate. Hubble 5 had caught glimpses of strange objects entering the solar system. But nothing was conclusive. Nothing that could prepare them for what, or who, was about to come knocking. And then, on the 1-year anniversary of the first Mars landing, with humans still marveling at their own ingenuity and their baby steps into a larger world, they appeared. 100 ships hovering over 100 cities. Leo had seen the vids 1,000 times, had heard his father recount the day in excruciating detail. The military response, the scream of sirens, the flooded streets, the panic fed by too many movies where flying saucers fried national monuments with blasts of nuclear energy and bug-like xenomorphs fed on the brains of fleeing Earthlings. But it was nothing like that. The Ikari broadcast their message in every earthly language so that no one would misunderstand. Do not fear, they said. We are friends. That was it at first. Those 2 proclamations, though many more followed in the days and weeks to come. Revelations to a shocked and anxious planet, that we humans were only one of hundreds of civilized species in the galaxy, that all our wildest dreams about interstellar travel were about to come true overnight, and that our planet, the lovely blue and green marble called Earth, contained a treasure more precious than we would ever have dreamed of. Ventasium, loads of it, heaps of it, deep in the planet's crust, and they, the Ikari, would show us how to use it. And with it all came the stark realization that humans were once again Neanderthals, fashioning axes out of flint. With their ships capable of traveling from star to star and weapons that seemed lifted straight out of pulp paperbacks and summer blockbusters, the Ikari were technologically superior in every way. The one thing that the people of Earth had to offer them, that the planet itself had to offer, the visitors could have easily taken by force. But they didn't. They asked nicely. Share your Ventasium, they said, and we will be your personal escorts into this great big universe. And humanity did the only thing it could do in that situation. It said, okay. Only later did the people of Earth realize that the Ikari weren't the only ones interested in its resources, that Ventasium was the hottest commodity in the galaxy. Some, like the Djiarik, started wars over it. Others simply stole it and traded it on the black market. Those others were called pirates. Leo had heard stories of pirates growing up. Not Captain Kidd and Jack Sparrow, though he'd heard of them too, but actual pirates. A disorganized mob of criminals from every corner and crevice of the galaxy patrolled through trading routes, disabling freighters with ion cannons and blasting their way through airlocks, brandishing pistols in both hands as they made their demands. They never said "arg" or flew the skull and bones, but they lived by the same basic code as the pirates from the books. Take what you can get, wherever you can get it, the devil take the rest. The Ikari mostly considered pirates to be a nuisance, Leo knew. Outcasts and outlaws who, for one reason or another, refused to be part of the Ikari-led coalition of planets. Occasionally the Ikari would report on the execution of a band of buccaneers who had been caught attempting to raid one of their supply ships. But in comparison to the war with the Dijarik, the occasional rogue swiping a few cores of Ventasium was little more than a pest. Why bother swatting mosquitoes when you're dealing with a hornet's nest? Except the mosquitoes were multiplying. If the stories Leo heard were to be trusted, more and more creatures of every stripe were turning to piracy. For some, the cost of Ventasium was too dear to acquire it through honest means. For others, it was a chance to make a tidy profit, playing one side against the other and selling the universe's most precious commodity to the highest bidder. Some, Leo suspected, just wanted to watch the universe burn. Whatever the reason, Leo knew that pirates were not to be trusted. At best, they were outsiders, turning their back on the coalition and everything it stood for: peace and order and cooperation. At worst, they were thugs, thieves, and murderers. Either way, they weren't the kind of people Leo ever wanted to meet. Leo skidded to a stop just inside one of the hangar doors, his sweaty hands still clutching his brother's. His eyeballs popped. What the heck is that thing? Leo had encountered many different starships over the years. Hulking cruisers, sleek skiffs, solar yachts, the massive box-shaped barges that the Ikari used to transport its shipments of excavated Ventasium from Earth. He'd seen military fighters and civilian pleasure boats, but he'd never seen anything quite like the ship sitting in front of him. It was shaped funny, for starters, like a giant eggplant, or maybe a pear, tapered at the front but spreading out in the rear, perhaps to make room for more cargo. Twin foils jutted from either side and extended past the center cockpit like walrus tusks, an unusual modification for what appeared to be a freighter, and a small freighter at that. But not a helpless one. Unlike the Beagle, this pirate ship carried plenty of firepower. Torpedo bays, front-mounted cannons, a turret in its belly. It also sported 3 standard propulsion engines in addition to an FTL drivetrain, which meant it could probably move when it needed to. The ship looked like it had been through some tight scrapes, judging by the scorch marks etched along its hull. It was easily 4 times the size of the damaged shuttle and filled up half the Beagle's hangar. "It's so yellow," Gareth finished for him. True, Leo had never seen a yellow ship before, though the paint was stripped in places, revealing dingy grays and rusted reds underneath. Of course, Leo had never seen a pirate ship before either. Not up close. Maybe this is what they all looked like. Leo's initial impression of pirates came from the official coalition information vids he saw growing up. The message was always delivered in the same monotone, mechanical voice. Piracy is a crime. The coalition is dedicated to the safety and security of all its member planets. Any pirate caught attacking a coalition ship will be prosecuted to the full extent of Ikari law. Those public service announcements only hinted at the horrors pirates committed. Worse were the tales Leo heard, traded among the Beagle's crew. That pirates took no prisoners. That they were blood-hungry murderers who forced captured crew out of airlocks to suffocate in the cold gripe of space, or sold them to work as slaves on distant mining planets. That they were all criminals of one kind or another before they even became pirates, and therefore accustomed to working on the wrong side of the law. Text said they were actually worse than the enemy, because at least the Dijarik were committed to the Dijarik Empire. Pirates had no such allegiances. They were outlaws, with ships. Oddly shaped, mustard yellow ships. "Gareth, what are we doing?" Leo asked, but his brother's attention was drawn to the sound of voices coming through the main hangar door. He grabbed Leo by the back of his shirt and pulled him behind a set of empty drums that once contained fuel for the Beagle's sublight engines. the same engines that had been decimated by Dijari torpedoes 4 days ago. Leo was dragged down just as Bastian Black entered, followed immediately by the girl who had nearly choked Captain Sato to death with her clawed hand. She was the one talking, though it sounded more like lecturing. I just wonder sometimes if you have your head screwed on is all. What made you think this wreck was a good target, that they would have anything at all that we would give a fart's fart about? It was a sitting duck. No weapons, no shields. It was worth the risk, the wanted pirate replied. But a coalition ship? Seriously, Baz. We need to be more careful. What if the crew had been armed with more than just pipes and wrenches, and the captain could have blown your brains out? What little of them there are. Good thing you were there to stop her. Yeah, well, one day maybe I won't be around to save your hide. If only that were true, Bastian Black quipped. The girl shook her head. You know what I think? I think you might just be the worst pirate in history. And I don't mean human history. I mean the history of the entire universe. Tell me that when your head is worth 8,000 pentars. You're only worth that much because you go around telling everybody about how notorious you are. Pirates are supposed to be notorious. You can't be notorious if nobody knows you. Pirates are also supposed to take things, the girl said. That's the definition of piracy. And what exactly are we leaving here with? Oh, wait, nothing. In fact, you told them you would give them food. That's the reverse of piracy. She has a point, the four-armed creature lumbering just behind the human said. It was the first time Leo had heard it speak. It had a surprisingly gentle voice, almost like a cat's purr. Leo crouched beside his brother, watching as the man and the girl stopped to argue by the boarding ramp while the beast began messing with a panel in the ship's belly. Gareth's eyes were fixed on the alien, but Leo couldn't take his off the other two, right up in each other's faces. I'd like to remind you that I'm technically the captain of this ship, the man said. He didn't sound angry so much as exasperated. Then acts like it. Our shipment's already overdue. We don't have time to board every bombed-out, derelict piece of scrap that we happen to pick up on the scanners, especially if we're not going to get anything out of it. What's the code for this compartment again? The creature in the robe called out, interrupting. 26E4U, the man said before turning back to the girl. It's one container of food. Besides, it will help ease my conscience. Since when do you have a conscience? She snapped back. Good point, he said. There was a loud clatter as the giant creature pulled not one but two large containers free from the underbelly of the Icarus, dropping them to the floor. He and Bastian Black exchanged nods. Then the pirate captain spoke into the communicator, fixed to his jacket. Skits, you there? Fire up the engines. We're leaving. This one's a bust. Which some of us already knew, the girl added. A flurry of static hissed through the device, followed by what sounded a little like crying, though from where he was heading, it was tough for Leo to make out. It sounded distorted, mechanical, like the high-pitched whine of grinding gears. Wonder what that's all about, the girl asked. Who knows? Could be another power surge, or maybe one of us looked at her funny before we left. Boo! Batten down the hatches. We're out of here. The creature shut the compartment door and followed the two humans up the ramp as it closed. The pirates were leaving. Thank the stars. Gareth muttered something under his breath and turned to Leo. You have your inhaler, yeah? Leo patted the pocket of his khaki coalition pants and nodded. He never went anywhere without his inhaler or his watch, both necessities in their own way. Why? Gareth didn't answer. He didn't need to. Leo figured it out soon enough. He knew the way his brother's mind worked. He glanced at the Icarus and then back at Gareth, realizing what was meant by getting out of here. No. No way. Nuh-uh, Leo said. We are not getting on that ship. He looked at the battered freighter, its ramp already shut. Stowaway? Aboard a pirate ship? You heard Captain Sato, Gareth said. The Beagle's not going to make it much longer, and we can't count on a rescue. These guys found us by accident, and right now, their ship is our best chance of going to get help. It's worth the risk. Leo shook his head vehemently. It didn't make any sense. Even in its crippled state, Stuck out here in the void, running out of food, the Beagle was still safer than sneaking aboard a pirate freighter. Captain Sato and the crew were like Leo's second family. He knew every turn of the ship, could tell you who slept in which bunk. He'd seen the faces of 100 different planets from the Beagle's starboard observation deck. As much as he'd hated getting on it in the first place, as much as he dreaded leaving Earth, staying on board this limping, paralyzed ship was easily preferable to stowing away with a band of outlaws. "It's too dangerous," Leo said. "You saw what that girl did to the captain." Gareth put his hands on Leo's shoulders. "I did. But if we do this right, they will never even know we're there. We just hide in that cargo bin and wait till they dock at their next stop, then we sneak away and go get help. Simple as that." Any time anyone ever said, "simple as that," it was to hide just how complicated things could be. But what about all our stuff? Leo thought about Houdini the rabbit, tucked under his thin coalition-issued pillow. Thought about his backpack hanging in the locker that he used for a closet stuffed full of comics that his brother said he'd grown out of. Thought about the pictures taped to the wall by his bunk, including the only one he had of his whole family, all 5 of them, Amos included. "Forget about your stuff. We'll get it when we come back. Now come on." With both hands, Leo's older brother dragged him to his feet, pushing him toward the underside of the ship, careful to stay clear of the view of the cockpit. Leo glanced back at the hangar door, expecting, or maybe just wanting, to see Captain Sato there. She would order them to stop, override his brother's foolishness. But the hangar doorway was empty. "Too sexy for you," Gareth muttered, typing in the code he'd overheard. The latch slid open. From inside the ship, Leo heard a kind of clanking and then felt a hum of energy, the ship's engines powering up. He looked into the cargo space. A thin strip of light showed it to be half full of metal containers and crates. And a lot smaller than he expected. How long would they have to hide away in there? Hours? Days? This was a terrible idea. Gareth frowned when he saw the size of the cargo bin, but then he set his raised face again. He reached for Leo to boost him up, but Leo pushed his brother's hands away. "No. No way. Why can't we just wait here?" "Wait for what?" Gareth said sharply. "For the Djarik to come back and finish us off? For the life support systems to give out? To starve to death? We can't stay here and just hope for a rescue. We have to do this. We have to go get help." "But Dad..." "What about him? We have no idea where Dad is or what happened to him. Face it, Leo, we're on our own." Leo winced, his brother's words biting deep. His eyes stung. He shook his head again. "You don't know that. You can't know that. He's out there. He's still alive, and he's going to come looking for us." Gareth spoke more calmly. Okay. You're right. He's out there. And once we get help, we can go find him. But for now, I've got to do what's best for you, understand? I promised him. He said I was in charge." Leo looked at the cramped cargo hold, back at his brother. "I'm not going. You can't make me." Leo felt his brother's hand, fingers wrapped around his own. Felt the squeeze. Gareth pressed his forehead to Leo's, locking eyes. "Do you trust me?" Leo felt himself go slack. So many times Gareth had been the only one around. After Mom was gone, with Dad spending all his time at the lab, leaving only one Fender who knew how to cook. Only one Fender around to read stories and tuck Leo in, to make sure he finished his homework and took a bath, to teach him how to whistle with his fingers and to ride his hoverboard. Gareth was there when nobody else could be. "He'll find us, or we'll find him," Leo said. "We'll find each other," Gareth replied. "I promise." Leo nodded, placing one foot in his brother's hands for a boost, pulling himself into the belly of the ship. The compartment was dusty and dry and even more cramped than Leo first thought. He wasn't sure how the 2 of them were ever going to fit. The sound of the engines reverberated in Leo's ears. He lay beside the hatch and put his hand out to help pull Gareth up. His brother didn't take it. Gareth's face looked pained but determined. "What are you waiting for? Get in." "There's no room," Gareth called up, talking louder over the sound of the freighter's engines. "Remember the plan. As soon as the ship lands, you get out of there and go find help. Be careful who you talk to. Coalition only. Show them your patch. Let them know who you are. Tell them what happened. Send them to come find us. The coordinates should be logged in your watch." "What?" Leo yelled, seizing with a sudden panic. "What are you talking about?" His brother was reaching out now, but not for Leo's hand. He was typing numbers into the keypad that controlled the compartment hatch. "At least this way I'll know you got out." "Gareth, what are you doing?" Leo shouted. "You have to come with me. We have to stay together. I can't do this by myself. Gareth." Leo got to his knees, ready to jump down, but it was too late. "Be brave, Leo," Gareth said, holding up one hand as the hatch slid closed. What do you call an exceptionally hairy alien? An extra fur estial. Stan Fustman, 101 Jokes That Are Out of This World, 2048.